Within the towering stone walls of the royal castle, where ancient magic still pulses through every corridor, a ceremony is about to change everything. The royal family gathers in the grand court, their voices rising in unison as they perform the sacred ritual passed down through generations. The summoning of heroes from another world. In a blinding flash of ethereal light, our protagonist Keisuke materializes in this alien realm, his mind struggling to grasp the impossible transition that just occurred. Just moments ago, he had been walking peacefully toward his favorite bookstore, lost in mundane thoughts. Now, disoriented and breathless, he finds himself standing in a place that defies all logic and reason. His eyes scan the unfamiliar surroundings, landing on two figures who stand before him with expressions of triumph and relief, almost mechanical in their joy, as if this were just another successful task completed. Confusion grips Keisuke's chest as he tries to make sense of the chaos erupting around him. Then he notices them, three other bewildered individuals scattered nearby. One carries himself with the aggressive swagger of a street fighter, another radiates the nervous energy of an overworked student, and the third is unmistakably an otaku, his eyes already gleaming with recognition. This rotund fellow seems to be processing their predicament faster than anyone else, his expression shifting from shock to excitement as he mutters something about isekai summonings. Could this really be happening? The absurdity of it all crashes over Keisuke like a wave. When he frames it through that lens, the lens of those fantasy stories he'd read, suddenly this impossible situation starts to feel strangely thrilling. A commanding voice cuts through the confusion. The heroes turn as a regal woman steps forward, her crown catching alight, and introduces herself with practiced grace as Queen Walujo, sovereign ruler of this kingdom. Keisuke's thoughts derail completely. He's acutely aware he's just a normal guy, and yet here stands this queen whose proportions seem almost impossibly exaggerated, her chest nearly defying the laws of physics. The queen's expression turns grave as she pleads with them to become their salvation. Her kingdom teeters on the brink of destruction, she explains, crushed beneath the relentless assaults of the demon lord's armies. Victory after victory escapes them, and hope grows thin with each passing day. The thug-looking hero explodes immediately, his voice dripping with indignation. Is she insane? Ancient legends don't give them the right to kidnap people from their own world and dump their problems on strangers. The nervous student chimes in, panic creeping into his voice. He has a shift at his part-time job soon, and they need to send them back immediately. But the queen's response freezes the blood in their veins. They don't possess the knowledge to reverse the summoning ritual. The only being who might understand such ancient magic. Her words hang heavy in the air. This is their reality now. No escape unless they face the darkness threatening this world. Keisuke's mind races, connecting the threads of this cruel trap. The queen is essentially asking them to eliminate the one person who holds their ticket home. Yet despite the gravity pressing down on them, despite the impossible odds, Keisuke feels something unexpected stirring in his chest, anticipation, excitement. While the others grumble about having no choice but to play along and take down this demon lord, our protagonist can't deny the rush of adrenaline beginning to course through his veins. Queen Walujo's face softens with gratitude as she thanks them for their understanding, then announces the next phase, the summoning of their sacred relics. The heroes exchange confused glances. Sacred relics? What could that possibly mean? The queen gestures elegantly toward the robed figure standing behind her, giving the silent command to proceed. The priest steps forward, his voice measured and ancient as he explains the divine gifts about to be bestowed upon them. These sacred relics, he intones, are celestial tools granted to every summoned hero, a trinity of power. First, an item box capable of holding infinite objects without weight or space limitations. Second, an appraisal skill that can pierce the veil of mystery around any creature or object, revealing its true nature. And finally, his voice drops dramatically. A unique divine weapon, forged by the gods themselves for each hero. The summoned individuals lean forward, realizing these weapons will define their entire combat capabilities in this world. The priest nods solemnly, confirming their instincts are correct. He continues with growing intensity. In this realm, holy weapons manifest in different forms for each chosen warrior. Some receive mighty swords, others powerful bows, shields that can withstand any blow, or other legendary armaments. Each weapon harbors a special ability that can turn the tide of battle. But then his expression darkens as he delivers the restriction that comes with such power. Once bound to a hero, only that single weapon can be wielded for their entire existence here. Keisuke's stomach tightens as the implications sink in. No backup weapons, no alternative. The queen commands the priest to begin, and Keisuke feels his heart hammering against his ribcage. Magic. Real magic is about to happen right before his eyes. The fantasy nerd in him can barely contain his excitement. Ethereal lights materialize above each hero's head, swirling and pulsing with otherworldly energy that makes the air itself shimmer. The radiance intensifies until it's almost painful to look at directly, forcing them to shield their eyes from the brilliant display. Through the blinding luminescence, 4 divine weapons descend from the heavens, each finding its chosen hero with unerring precision. As the light fades and the ritual concludes, the queen requests that each hero step forward to introduce themselves and present the weapon they've been granted by fate. The aggressive young man moves first, his confidence evident as he declares himself Yamada, wielder of the divine sword that gleams with deadly promise in his grip. The nervous student follows, identifying himself as Iweta, his hands gripping a magnificent spear that seems to hum with latent power. The portly otaku introduces himself as Ida, clearly relieved to see a bow materialize in his possession. Perfect for staying far from danger, he notes with obvious satisfaction. Finally, all eyes turn to our protagonist as he clears his throat and speaks his name, Kisuke. His divine weapon is a bag, just a simple cloth bag. The silence lasts exactly 2 heartbeats before Yamada and Iweta erupt into laughter, their voices echoing mockingly through the royal chamber. Between gasps of cruel amusement, they ask how anyone is supposed to fight with that ridiculous thing. What's he gonna do? Suffocate monsters with fabric? But Ida, the kind-hearted otaku, refuses to join in the mockery. He places a reassuring hand on Kisuke's shoulder, insisting it's premature to assume the worst. After all, every holy weapon supposedly contains unique abilities. Perhaps this bag conceals extraordinary power that isn't immediately obvious. The priest interjects, reminding them that alongside their weapons, they should have received both the appraisal and item box skills. They should examine their abilities carefully before making judgments. Kisuke clings to that thread of hope, refusing to let despair take root yet. Maybe Ida's right. Maybe this unassuming bag holds secrets that will prove everyone wrong. With trembling hands, he activates appraisal on his divine weapon and reads the description that materializes before his eyes. The bag connects to another dimension, allowing the user to store anything inside. That's it, nothing more. The simple, anticlimactic explanation hangs in the air like a death sentence. Even the other heroes fall silent, the magnitude of Keisuke's misfortune rendering them momentarily speechless. Then Yamada's booming laughter shatters the uncomfortable quiet, echoing even louder than before. The mockery reaches new heights as they point out the crushing irony. What purpose does his bag serve when they all already possess an item box? The redundancy is almost comical. Our protagonist stands frozen, the reality of his situation crashing down like a physical weight. In the hero's party, he is utterly, completely, devastatingly useless. Isuke can feel his spirit beginning to crack, the excitement of adventure draining away like water through his fingers. Ida desperately tries to salvage the moment, his voice kind but strained as he suggests that even without combat ability, the appraisal and item box skills should enable Kisuke to live comfortably in this world. But the truth echoes in the silence that follows. Useless. That's what he is. Even Kisuke can no longer deny it, the word burning in his mind like a brand. Logic dictates the obvious conclusion. The other 3 form a perfectly balanced party without any need for dead weight slowing them down. His gaze drifts to Queen Walujo, and something in her expression makes his blood run cold. That smile she wears is too perfect, too practiced, too artificial. Behind those eyes, something calculating watches him with barely concealed disdain. She dismisses them with false warmth, instructing the heroes to rest in their assigned quarters while they prepare for the challenges ahead. Tomorrow, she claims, their real journey begins. Alone in his chamber, Kisuke collapses onto the bed, releasing a long, soul-deep sigh that seems to carry all his shattered dreams. Back in his original world, he had been nothing special, just another student moving through the monotonous routine of school and home. When he first arrived here, for one brilliant moment, he believed his ordinary life was finally over. Adventure, heroism, meaning, but that dream died as quickly as it was born, crushed under the weight of a worthless divine weapon and the cruel laughter of his fellow heroes. He tosses restlessly on the mattress, unable to escape the suffocating feeling of inadequacy that wraps around his chest like a vice. The memory of their mocking faces burns behind his eyelids, replaying on an endless loop. Useless, worthless, a joke. Only Ida's kindness offers any light in this darkness, a small gesture of compassion that somehow makes everything slightly more bearable. Maybe not all hope is lost. Maybe he can still find a way forward, even if that path remains shrouded in fog. A sharp knock interrupts his spiral of self-pity, and Keisuke drags himself from the bed to answer it. A maid stands in the doorway, her expression neutral as she delivers an unexpected message. Queen Walujo requests his presence in her private chambers. She wishes to speak with him alone, away from the others. The request catches Kisuke completely off guard, his thoughts scattering like startled birds. Why would the queen want to see him privately? His imagination, perhaps seeking escape from darker thoughts, begins conjuring various scenarios. Just the two of them, alone in her room, what could possibly happen? As he walks through the castle corridors toward her chambers, his mind keeps returning to her appearance. Undeniably beautiful, her figure striking and impossible to ignore. Each step brings new, wild fantasies. What if something incredible happens? The thought feels absurd even as he entertains it, too convenient to be remotely realistic. But then again, he's standing in a fantasy world where magic exists and heroes are summoned from other dimensions. Maybe, just maybe, maybe even something this fortunate could occur, with that fragile hope clinging to his thoughts. He reaches the queen's door, takes a deep breath, and pushes it open to step inside. Keisuke's mind goes completely blank as his eyes register what awaits him. Queen Walujo reclines before him, draped in sheer nightwear that leaves almost nothing to imagination, her lips curved in a sultry smile that promises something. Her voice drips like honey as she purrs that she's been waiting for him, her eyes never leaving his face. The fabric of her garment is so transparent that Keisuke can see practically everything, his face burning with sudden heat. This close, her beauty becomes almost overwhelming, every feature perfectly arranged, every curve deliberately displayed. The queen beckons him closer with a delicate gesture, her finger curling in invitation. Keisuke's teenage hormones surge into overdrive, rational thought evaporating as he takes one step forward, then another, his mind racing with possibilities that seem too good to be true. As he moves within arm's reach, unable to tear his gaze away from her, something shifts in the air. Ancient words spill from the queen's lips in a language he doesn't recognize, and beneath his feet, arcane symbols flare to life, forming a complex magic circle that had been invisible until this moment. Keisuke stands frozen at its center, realizing his mistake too late. Paralysis slams into his body like an invisible hammer, and he crashes to the floor, every muscle locked and unresponsive no matter how desperately he tries to move. He strains against the magical binding with everything he has, but his body refuses to obey even the simplest command. The queen's musical laughter fills the chamber as she rises from her seat and places her foot on his chest, grinding down with casual cruelty. Hail and confusion war in Keisuke's mind as Queen Walujo's true nature reveals itself. Her voice turns cold as winter frost as she declares that heroes who draw worthless sacred weapons serve no purpose in her plans. He's become expendable, unnecessary, trash to be discarded. Keisuke stares up at her through the haze of paralysis as she pronounces his sentence with chilling finality. The seventh layer of the prison, a place that sounds like it exists in the darkest nightmares. Before he can even process what's happening, the teleportation spell activates, and reality twists violently around him while his body remains completely immobilized. He plummets through dimensional space and crashes onto something hard, his mind screaming silently for his mother, for anyone who might save him from this nightmare. But salvation never comes. Our protagonist has become nothing more than a broken toy, used and discarded by the very person who claimed to need his help. Time passes, minutes or hours, he can't tell, before sensation gradually returns to his limbs and he finds himself sprawled across rough, uneven stone. Isekai'd pushes himself upright, wincing at the pain, and forces his eyes to adjust to the gloom as he surveys his prison. Everywhere he looks, he sees only endless limestone formations stretching into darkness, as though he's been entombed within the belly of some vast underground cavern system. The oppressive walls of rock press in from all sides, creating a labyrinth with no visible exit. At least the stones themselves emit a faint phosphorescent glow, providing just enough light to see the hopelessness of his situation. But that meager illumination doesn't change the fundamental truth. He's been abandoned in an unknown location, somewhere in the depths of a dangerous fantasy world where monsters undoubtedly lurk. His fate continues to mock him at every turn, dangling hope before snatching it away. One day, he vows through gritted teeth, he will make Queen Walujo pay for this betrayal. Rage surges through him, and he slams his fist into the cavern wall with all his strength, only to immediately regret it as pain explodes across his knuckles. Cradling his throbbing hand, Keisuke forces himself to think practically. He needs to figure out his next move, though he doubts the treacherous queen gave him any useful information about where the seventh layer actually is. Escape seems impossible. He's alone, trapped underground with no obvious exit and only the most basic skills to his name, appraisal and item box, neither of which will help him fight or navigate. Then something catches his attention. The bag. His divine weapon is here with him, despite having left it back in his quarters. How did it follow him? The realization strikes him. Perhaps this bag is soul-bound, permanently attached to him regardless of where he goes. Convenient, but for what purpose? What can a simple storage bag possibly do in a situation like this? A sound echoes through the cavern, something scraping against stone, accompanied by a low, menacing hiss that makes his hair stand on end. Keisuke whirls around, and his blood turns to ice. Emerging from the shadows is a serpent-like creature that dwarfs him by a factor of 10, its massive scaled body coiling as it fixes predatory eyes upon him. Those eyes, they hold nothing but cold hunger, an alien intelligence that sees him as nothing more than prey. Terror roots him to the spot. His legs tremble violently, barely supporting his weight as primal fear floods his system. Operating on pure instinct, he activates appraisal. It's the only ability he has, the only thing he can do as death slithers toward him. The monster's information materializes before his eyes, and each word feels like another nail in his coffin. Viper Poison Serpent. Rank S. Special ability, dissolving poison capable of melting solid rock instantaneously. Even without extensive knowledge of this world, Keisuke understands what S-rank means. This is an apex predator, something that could slaughter experienced adventurers with ease, and he's nothing. No combat experience, no training, no proper weapon. Just a hapless student who arrived in this world mere hours ago, now facing certain death in the darkness. His legs give out, and he crashes backward onto the stone floor, his body shaking uncontrollably. The Viper rears back and releases a spray of acid green poison that arcs through the air directly toward him. This is it. The end. His adventure lasted less than a day before reaching this pathetic conclusion. The caustic liquid will hit him in seconds, dissolving his flesh and bone until nothing remains but a steaming puddle on the cavern floor. In what he believes are his final moments, Keisuke's mind flashes to his parents' faces. He never got to say goodbye. They'll never know what happened to their son. Then, impossibly, a voice cuts through his despair. Feminine, synthetic, emanating from the bag. Would you like to store the poison? Y-E-S. The word tears from his throat without conscious thought, a drowning man grasping at any lifeline. His bag's opening suddenly expands impossibly wide and, the deadly poison vanishes mid-flight, every droplet sucked into the dimensional space within the bag as though it never existed, the air left completely clear. Isekai stares in disbelief, his mind struggling to process survival. The voice speaks again, calm and matter-of-fact. Poison stored successfully. He's alive. Against all logic and probability, he's still breathing. Then another notification. Conditions for level up have been met. Holy weapon has leveled up. The Viper lunges at him with terrifying speed, and panic explodes through Keisuke's chest as he realizes he still has no way to fight back. The bag's voice returns with another query. Would you like to store the Viper poison serpent? Yes. He screams the answer, beyond caring about anything except survival. The bag's opening widens again, and an irresistible force drags the massive serpent forward. The creature thrashes and writhes, fighting against the dimensional pull, but inexorably, meter by meter, it's drawn into the impossible space within. Keisuke grips the bag with both hands, holding on for dear life as the enormous monster is gradually compressed and absorbed. The process taking several heart-stopping seconds. Finally, with one last violent surge, the serpent's tail disappears into the bag, and the opening seals shut. Keisuke sits in stunned silence, his hands still clutching the bag, trying to comprehend what just happened. The voice confirms, Viper poison serpent stored successfully. Holy weapon has leveled up. This changes everything. His useless bag isn't redundant at all. It's fundamentally different from the standard item box. Item boxes can't store living creatures. But this bag just devoured an S-rank monster whole, as easily as breathing. The notification continues. New skill acquired. Retrieve. A grin slowly spreads across Keisuke's face despite everything he's been through. This bag is like having the magic pocket of that famous blue robotic cat from the anime he used to watch. Suddenly, uselessly doesn't seem like the right word anymore, not even close. A sudden idea strikes him. What if he tests the retrieve skill? He focuses his intention and asks the bag to provide him with water. To his absolute amazement, cool, clean water materializes from the bag's depths, real and tangible in his hands. The implications hit him like a wave. In this deadly underground prison where survival seemed impossible, he now has access to the most precious resource of all. Emboldened, he makes another request, this time for a sweet bun, one of his favorite snacks from home. And there it is, soft and familiar in his grasp, his first meal since being ripped from his world and thrown into this nightmare. The poor soul hadn't eaten anything until this very moment. How surreal that his first taste of food in another world comes not from this realm, but from the life he left behind. But survival doesn't allow for sentimentality or pickiness. He tears into the bun without hesitation. Frustration and hunger merge as he continues eating, one bun after another, until his stomach finally stops protesting. Taste is exactly as he remembers. Nothing has changed about the familiar sweetness. And yet somehow, everything about this simple act of eating feels fundamentally different as tears begin streaming down his face without warning. He wipes them away roughly, overwhelmed by gratitude for simply being alive. Just minutes ago, he had resigned himself to dying alone in this forsaken place, with no hope of seeing another sunrise. Once his emotions settle, clarity returns. He begins pulling sweet bun after sweet bun from the bag, stockpiling them. As long as this miraculous weapon remains with him, starvation is no longer a threat. Water and food are guaranteed, and if danger approaches, he can simply absorb the attacks and monsters into the bag's dimensional space. With this strategy, he'll methodically conquer this cave system and find his way back to the surface. He has to. Deep within another section of the cavern network, an ancient presence stirs, noting with mild curiosity that the silence it has grown accustomed to over countless years is being disrupted by unusual activity. Keisuke remains blissfully unaware of the entities dwelling in these depths he mistakenly believes to be a simple cave. For now, he simply marvels at his divine weapon's capabilities. After resting briefly, he takes stock of his circumstances with renewed perspective. Food and water are secured through the bag. The monsters inhabiting this place might actually be manageable if he continues using the absorption ability strategically. Curiosity gets the better of him, and he decides to experiment. He pushes his hand into the bag's opening to see if there's a bottom to this dimensional space. His arm keeps going and going, extending impossibly far while the bag's exterior maintains its modest, unassuming appearance. Enough experimentation. It's time to move forward and locate an exit from this underground prison. He walks for what feels like an eternity, his footsteps echoing off stone walls. But the scenery never changes, just endless limestone formations that look identical to the rocks he passed 100 meters back and the 100 meters before that. Frustration mounts as he wanders aimlessly through the monotonous tunnels. What he desperately needs right now is a map, like in those RPG games he used to play. Wait, could the bag provide one? It's worth a try. He focuses his intention and requests a map from the dimensional storage. The bag's voice responds coldly. Insufficient funds. Kisuke freezes in shock. Money? He needs money to use the bag? But that doesn't make sense. He used it earlier without any payment. Confused, he tries requesting water again and receives the same response. Insufficient funds. Why didn't money matter before? Then realization crashes over him like ice water. His hands frantically search his pockets and pull out his wallet. Empty. Every last coin has vanished into thin air. The allowance he'd been carefully saving for months to buy the newest manga volume gone. Completely depleted without him even noticing. He needs to understand the mechanism. Carefully, he places a 5-yen coin on the ground and requests a 5-yen chocolate from the bag. Coin disappears instantly, vanishing before his eyes as though it never existed. And in his palm materializes a small chocolate bar worth exactly 5 yen. The truth crystallizes with painful clarity. Every item he extracts from the bag costs him an equivalent price. This crushing realization brings back memories of his sister's constant warnings to think before acting, to consider consequences. He should have listened. Despair threatens to swallow him whole. He might have just squandered his only chance at survival by carelessly burning through all his money. But wait, if this place operates like a dungeon from fantasy stories, then there should be treasures scattered throughout these depths, left behind by previous adventurers or monsters. The thought reignites a spark of hope. He resumes his exploration with renewed determination, though for a considerable time he finds nothing but more rock and darkness. Until finally, something breaks the monotony. Ahead in the gloom, he spots a shape that doesn't match the natural cave formations. Something that looks distinctly human. Hope surges through his chest and he breaks into a run toward the figure, excitement and relief flooding his system. Another person. He's not alone. But as he draws near enough to see clearly, that hope shatters into horror. What he mistook for a living person is actually skeletal remains. Someone who met their end in this very spot, their bones picked clean by time. Isukai's entire body begins trembling uncontrollably, his breath coming in short gasps. He stumbles backward and lands hard on his rear, unable to tear his eyes from the grim sight. This is his reality. This could be his fate. The thought hammers home the severity of his situation with brutal clarity. He clutches the bag against his chest reflexively, and strangely, the contact seems to drain away some of his panic and fear. Does it absorb negative emotions too? It's an odd thought, but the calming effect is undeniable. Once his heartbeat returns to something approaching normal, he forces himself to stand and approach the skeleton more closely. He needs to know, was this person another victim who failed to escape this underground tomb? Something glints in the dim phosphorescent light. A bag rests beside the skeleton's remains, its contents catching what little illumination exists down here. Isukai hesitates, his conscience warring with necessity. Taking from the dead feels wrong on every level, but survival demands difficult choices. In this situation, he needs every possible advantage. After a moment's internal struggle, he steels his resolve. First, he bows his head and whispers an apology to the deceased, then carefully retrieves the bag and examines what lies inside. He pulls out various utensils, worn from use, an empty water bottle, and his heart leaps. Actual money, currency from this world. The relief is tempered by the awful realization of how this person died. Starvation. Slow, agonizing starvation in the darkness. The thought makes Keisuke's stomach turn. He should at least bury the remains, give the deceased some dignity in death. But then a different idea takes shape in his mind. What if he stores the skeleton in his bag instead? When he makes it back to the surface, perhaps he can return these remains to the person's family or hometown. At least that way, their loved ones would have closure, and the dead could finally rest in peace. It's the least he can do to repay this unintended benefactor. He activates the storage function, and the bag's voice reads out the inventory with clinical precision. Stored, corpse of the dagger hero, holy dagger, 300,000 gold. Kisuke's blood runs cold. Another hero, the bag continues, level up achieved. Skills acquired from dagger hero, mapping, stealth, quick strike. The weight of this discovery settles over him like a shroud. He never imagined the bag could absorb and transfer skills from the deceased, but more importantly, the revelation that this was the dagger hero suggests something deeply disturbing. Perhaps Queen Lujo has been disposing of useless heroes for a long time. A solemn promise forms in Kisuke's heart. He will definitely bring this hero back to the surface and ensure proper rest. Until then, he asks the fallen hero's spirit to lend him strength for the journey ahead. He activates the mapping skill with a thought. A translucent map materializes before his eyes, displaying the cavern system's layout in remarkable detail. This changes everything. He can see the terrain extending far beyond his current position. With this, escape might actually be possible. But a troubling question surfaces. If the dagger hero possessed such a useful skill, why did he fail to escape? Kisuke recalls his sister's advice about thinking ahead. This world has already proven dangerous. He encountered an S-rank monster almost immediately. The dagger hero likely faced multiple deadly creatures and, fighting alone without proper combat abilities, eventually fell. The lesson is clear. From now on, Kisuke must use the bag strategically and manage his money conservatively, eating sparingly to preserve funds. Though checking the gold he just acquired, if converted to yen, this would be roughly 3 million. Not a small fortune. He continues forward, munching on sweet buns periodically to maintain his stamina. After walking for an extended period, something strikes him as odd. He hasn't encountered a single monster since the Viper Serpent. Maybe these creatures aren't as numerous as he feared? The tunnel opens into a larger chamber, more spacious than the cramped passages he's been navigating. Too focused on following the map's guidance, Keisuke fails to notice the massive presence waiting ahead. Even when it speaks to him, the words don't register. Only when Kisuke literally stumbles forward and collides with something does awareness finally dawn. His eyes travel upward and upward until they land on the enormous beast towering before him. Terror explodes through every nerve as he finds himself face to face with a wolf-like monster of truly colossal proportions. Their eyes meet, and time seems to freeze. Every instinct screams danger. This creature radiates a presence far more overwhelming than the Viper Serpent. Even without appraisal, its sheer size tells the story. But when he does check SSS rank Divine Wolf, one of the mightiest divine beasts in existence, his heart nearly stops. His mind races frantically, searching for a solution. What can he possibly do against something like this? The bag. He can try storing this divine beast just like he did with the Viper. His hands move toward the weapon. "Just chill," the divine beast says in a surprisingly calm voice. And to his own surprise, Kisuke freezes exactly as commanded. His body simply stops moving, as though the wolf's words carried compulsion magic. The divine beast's eyes widen slightly with what appears to be amazement. "You actually stopped?" Kisuke stands there, utterly confused about what's happening. "Why aren't you doing anything?" the divine wolf asks. "Because you told me to wait," Kisuke responds simply, his honesty apparently impressing the beast. "My sister tells me to wait like that all the time too," he adds without thinking. The wolf seems genuinely intrigued by this strange human who actually listens instead of fleeing or attacking. Usually, she explains, people either run screaming the moment they see her or die trying to fight. Kisuke's thoughts drift to the dagger hero. Was he one of those who ran? But honestly, this Fenrir doesn't seem dangerous at all. She's not attacking, and she's even having a normal conversation with him. Maybe she's not hostile after all. Then Fenrir's attention shifts to something else entirely. "What were you eating earlier?" Isuki glances at the sweet bun still in his hand. "This? It's a sweet bun." Fenrir's eyes light up with unmistakable interest. She's actually drooling at the sight of it. He holds up the bun tentatively. "Do you want to try one?" The eagerness radiating from Fenrir's massive form is almost comical. Kisuke makes his decision, though his hands shake slightly. "Come a little closer," Fenrir requests. "I can't move from this spot." That's when he realizes she genuinely hasn't shifted position even once during their entire encounter. He approaches slowly, extending the sweet bun toward her enormous maw, acutely aware of how easily those teeth could bite him in half. Fenrir accepts the offering delicately and swallows it. Kisuke braces for the worst, but remarkably, she doesn't eat him. The divine wolf's reaction is instantaneous and overwhelming. She throws her head back and howls with pure joy, the sound wave so powerful that Kisuke is knocked flat on his back. Fenrir's entire body begins to glow with radiant light, her happiness manifesting as visible energy. Meanwhile, Kisuke lies sprawled on the ground in an undignified heap, his legs somehow ending up over his head from the force of her excitement. He scrambles back to his feet, slightly dazed, as Fenrir gushes about the incredible taste, the amazing aroma, the unique texture. Everything about that sweet bun was unlike anything she'd ever experienced in her long existence. She begs him desperately for more, and Kisuke finds himself in a difficult position. What if he refuses and she decides to eat him instead? The risk seems too great, though he relents and produces several different varieties of sweets from his bag, offering them to the eager divine wolf. Fenrir accepts each one with reverence, savoring them slowly, taking her time to appreciate every flavor. Kisuke sits cross-legged on the cave floor, waiting patiently as she works through the treats. Finally, after consuming the last piece, she exclaims about the sheer wonder of discovering such delicious things exist. "They don't exist in this world," Kisuke corrects gently. Understanding dawns in Fenrir's ancient eyes. "Ah, you're one of the summoned ones." Kisuke leans forward with interest. "Tell me more about that." Fenrir explains that people being summoned from other worlds isn't particularly unusual in this realm's history. The revelation makes Kisuke wonder how many others came before him and his fellow heroes. Were they all also summoned and subsequently abandoned by Queen Walujo or her royal ancestors when they proved useless? "I want to eat more," Fenrir announces hopefully. Kisuke hesitates, considering his limited funds. "I've been sealed here for hundreds of years," she continues, her voice carrying the weight of unimaginable loneliness. I've been starving this entire time. The word sealed clicks everything into place. That's why Fenrir can't move, why she hasn't attacked him. She literally can't. Kisuke pauses, an idea forming. Why don't you become my friend? He asks, extending his hand toward the divine beast. Fenrir's laughter erupts like thunder, echoing through the cavern as she finds the proposition utterly ridiculous. I used to think of humans as nothing but scum, she declares proudly. I am the demon lord of arrogance, Superbia. The revelation hits Kisuke like a physical blow. Fenrir is the demon lord, the very being Queen Walajo claimed they needed to defeat? This situation just became exponentially more complicated. But before he can process the implications, Superbia's laughter subsides, replaced by a genuine smile. But you're interesting. Fine, I'll become your friend. The legendary demon lord of arrogance has just agreed to friendship with a useless hero over the power of sweet buns. Relief washes over Kisuke. At least she didn't take offense and tear him apart. But one crucial question demands an answer. He looks directly into her ancient eyes and asks, point blank, is she truly the demon lord? Superbia confirms it without hesitation. The weight of that confirmation settles over Kisuke as his mind races to process the implications. The royal family painted a picture of the demon lord actively conquering the world, spreading destruction across the land. Yet here she is, imprisoned, powerless, sealed away in the deepest layer of this forsaken prison. How long have you been trapped here? He asks quietly. Superbia's expression grows distant, as though measuring time has lost all meaning. She doesn't know the exact duration, she admits. Centuries, at the very least. Perhaps far longer. The revelation crystallizes a new theory in Kisuke's mind. There must be multiple demon lords, not just one. Before he can pursue that thought, Superbia's attention shifts back to more immediate desires, urging him to produce more of those wonderful sweet buns. Kisuke complies without argument, feeding her one treat after another while she savors each bite. Once her appetite is temporarily satisfied, he asks what they should do next. Call me Spell, she says simply, her voice carrying a weariness that speaks of endless isolation. She's tired of this prison too, desperately so. But the seal that binds her here remains absolute. Escape is impossible while it holds. Curiosity drives Kisuke to ask about the circumstances of her imprisonment. How did someone as powerful as her end up sealed away? The story she tells is ancient. A battle long ago against a hero wielding barrier magic, one of the most formidable types of enchantment. The hero succeeded in trapping her here, and the seal has held ever since. The mention of a hero using barrier magic makes Kisuke wonder about the nature of conflicts between heroes and demon lords in this world. What drives such eternal struggles? Spell continues, explaining her countless attempts over the centuries to break free. Every method she tried, every ounce of power she poured into escaping, all of it failed. The seal proved unbreakable. An idea sparks in Kisuke's mind. He activates appraisal on Spell herself, and the information that appears confirms her story. An absolute barrier surrounds her, one that cannot be destroyed by any physical or magical means. The description is unequivocal and absolute, but if conventional methods can't break it, perhaps an unconventional approach might work. What if he tries storing Spell inside his bag? The dimensional storage operates on entirely different principles than normal magic. Spell tilts her massive head, confused by his muttering. What is he talking about? Kisuke explains the unique properties of his divine weapon, how it can absorb virtually anything into a pocket dimension. If they store her inside the bag, barrier and all, he could carry her to the surface. They'd escape together. Spell considers the proposal. It's unconventional enough that it might actually work, worth attempting at least. Kisuke focuses his intention and activates the storage ability, directing it toward the divine wolf. Spell's eyes widen as she senses the dimensional pull beginning to take effect. Energy swirls around her massive form, and for a moment, success seems within reach. But as time stretches on, Kisuke's stamina begins to drain rapidly. His breathing grows labored, sweat beading on his forehead. The bag's power wavers, then goes dormant. The attempt fails. He couldn't store her. The barrier proved too strong, deflecting the dimensional magic. Disappointment crashes over both of them like a physical weight. The barrier blocked the storage ability completely, leaving them right back where they started. But Kisuke refuses to accept defeat. Gritting his teeth, he tries again, pouring more willpower into the attempt. Failure. Again and again. Each attempt drains him further, but he keeps pushing, refusing to quit. His determination borders on obsession as he continues attempting to breach the impossible barrier, until finally his vision starts to blur, his legs giving out beneath him as exhaustion threatens to pull him into unconsciousness. Stop! Spell's voice cuts through his single-minded focus, genuine worry coloring her tone. If he forces himself to use more magic in this state, he'll start burning his own lifespan as fuel. The cost could be permanent. Kisuke slumps to the ground, frustration and despair warring in his chest. He wanted so badly to help her, to free her from this centuries-long prison. Rest, Spell says gently, her earlier imperious tone replaced with concern. He nods weakly, agreeing that he needs to recover his strength. Without thinking too much about it, Kisuke simply walks over to Spell and sits down, leaning against her impossibly soft fur. The contact sends an unexpected wave of emotion through Spell, someone's presence, someone's warmth after endless centuries of solitude. She carefully keeps her expression neutral, not wanting wanting to show just how much this simple gesture means. Then she asks a question that's been bothering her. Why is he going to such lengths for someone he just met? Because we're friends, Kisuke answers as though it's the most obvious thing in the world. Spell points out they've known each other for barely any time at all. But Kisuke shakes his head. His suffering is nothing compared to hers, he insists. He was abandoned here too, thrown into this cave alone, drowning in loneliness and despair. So for Spell, who has endured far worse for far longer, he can't just abandon her. He has to try everything possible to free her from this place. Spell asks what led to his abandonment, what happened to bring him here. Kisuke's expression darkens as he warns her. It's an awful story, one that makes him angry just remembering. But he tells her everything. The summoning, the divine weapons, Queen Walujo's betrayal, all of it. When he finishes, Spell asks about something specific. Did he encounter a serpent with poison abilities nearby? Keisuke confirms he did, explaining how he managed to survive by storing both the creature and its poison in his bag. Was that viper serpent a tough opponent even for you? Kisuke asks, curious about the power differential. Spell actually laughs at the question. No way, she's at least 100 times stronger than that creature. It wouldn't even register as a challenge. Of course, Kisuke thinks. She's a demon lord after all. The power scales are entirely different. Then something clicks in his mind, a realization that makes his eyes widen. What is it? Spell asks, noticing his sudden change in demeanor. Kisuke points out what she said earlier about the serpent's poison being a skill, which means there might be a way to make this work after all. The solution was staring them in the face the entire time. Why didn't I think of something this simple earlier, he mutters, though Spell remains confused about where his thoughts are leading. Isuke wants to show her directly through action rather than explanation. He moves to activate the bag again. Concern flashes across Spell's features as she warns him not to push himself too hard, not to risk his life. Boys, but Kisuke's expression radiates confidence this time. He's certain now, this attempt will definitely succeed. He activates the storage magic once more, but with a fundamentally different approach. The holy bag begins absorbing Spell, and this time something feels different. The resistance is less absolute. He's figured out the trick, and Spell senses it too. She's actually moving, the seal's grip loosening for the first time in centuries. The barrier fights back viciously, and the strain on Kisuke is immense, like trying to lift a mountain with his bare hands. But he refuses to give up, refuses to leave her behind in this darkness. Through sheer determination, he maintains the absorption. Till finally, with one last surge of effort, he successfully stores Spell completely within the bag's dimensional space. The bag seals shut and Keisuke nearly collapses with relief. He did it. By targeting the barrier itself for storage rather than Spell directly, she was pulled in alongside it. The bag's voice confirms, Absolute Barrier stored successfully, Demon Lord Superbia stored successfully, level up achieved. But the level up notifications don't stop. They keep coming, one after another, dozens upon dozens scrolling past in rapid succession until Keisuke grows tired of listening to them. Just how many levels did he gain from this single action? The system confirms that the more significant the stored object, the more dramatic the level increase. After what feels like an eternity, the notifications finally cease. Keisuke wishes there was some way to mute that voice. Curious about the results, he activates appraisal on his bag to check the changes. The information makes his jaw drop. Level 103. His bag jumped to level 103 in one incredible leap, and he's acquired multiple new skills in the process. Isuke stares at the numbers in disbelief, his mind struggling to process such a dramatic power increase. He has no frame of reference for what constitutes a great thing to store by the bag standards. But if storing Spell resulted in this much growth, she must be extraordinarily significant. More importantly, he needs to check if Spell is okay inside the dimensional space. The bag's voice asks if he would like to retrieve Superbia. The sudden question startles him momentarily. He agrees, and something unexpected emerges. A small black cube materializes, with text somehow reading Monster Box emblazoned on its surface. Isuke examines the mysterious cube, wondering how to open it and release Spell from within. It takes only a slight twist to unlock the mechanism. Light bursts forth as Spell emerges from the container, her massive form manifesting in the physical world once more. She's really here, free of the barrier, and Kisuke's face splits into a genuine smile at the sight. Spell seems stunned, as though she can't quite believe the barrier that imprisoned her for centuries is finally broken. Then suddenly, tears begin streaming down her face unbidden, emotion overwhelming her ancient composure. How could they not, after enduring isolation for so long? Completely alone with no one to speak to, nothing to sustain her, no hope of escape for century after century stacked upon each other. She throws her head back and howls, the sound carrying every ounce of joy, relief, and freedom she's feeling in this moment. The raw power behind her cry creates a shockwave that ripples through the atmosphere itself, strong enough to shatter limestone formations within a 100-meter radius, sending debris crashing down in all directions. She's finally free. Words fail to express her gratitude, but she tries anyway, thanking Kisuke from the deepest part of her ancient heart. Kisuke simply smiles and says he's just happy she's finally liberated from that prison. Spell makes a declaration then and there. From this moment forward, she will be his familiar, bound to him by choice rather than compulsion. No matter where he goes, no matter what challenges he faces, she will support him with all her knowledge and power, guide him wherever he wishes to travel, and protect him with every fang and claw at her disposal. Kisuke tries to say she can just be his friend, nothing more formal than that, but Spell insists. She swears to serve him faithfully and never leave his side, not even for a single moment. That's her decision. She leans forward and gives him an affectionate nuzzle, and in the next instant, brilliant light explodes outward as Spell begins transforming into her human form. The radiance is almost blinding, forcing Kisuke to shield his eyes until the transformation completes. When the light fades, Spell stands before him as a stunningly attractive woman with fluffy wolf ears and long, flowing hair cascading down her back. Kisuke's face turns crimson as he realizes she's completely naked, her bare form on full display. Spell laughs at his flustered reaction, clearly amused. She's finally able to assume her human shape again after all these years of being sealed. Why take human form? Kisuke manages to ask. Spell explains she can transform into whatever form will best serve him in any situation. The flexibility of her shape-shifting is part of her power, but the word serve makes Kisuke's imagination run wild. What kind of service is she talking about? Is it the kind he's thinking? His face burns hotter. Please put on some clothes. You don't need to serve me or anything. The phrasing just sounds too suggestive. Spell considers this, thinking perhaps she chose poorly. She should select a more appropriate form then. Light surrounds her again as she shrinks down into a small, adorable beast form resembling a fluffy pet. Yusuke had squeezed his eyes almost completely shut just in case, not wanting to see anything inappropriate. When he cautiously opens them again, he's greeted by the sight of an incredibly cute miniature wolf. Relief floods through him, and he can't help but smile at how adorable she looks with all that fluffy fur in a compact package. Without thinking, he sits down and begins gently stroking her soft coat, marveling at the texture. "Your fur looks even glossier than before," he remarks. That's when Spell notices something concerning. His hand is injured, dried blood visible on his knuckles. Isuke remembers when that happened earlier, when he punched the wall in frustration after being abandoned. "Come with me," Spell says, suddenly serious. She has something to show him. He follows her deeper into the cave system until they reach an area filled with crystalline formations surrounding a natural spring at the center, its waters glowing with ethereal light. Isuke never expected to find a spring in a place like this, so deep underground. Spell instructs him to place his wounded hand in the water. The moment his injured knuckles touch the liquid, the wounds seal themselves instantly, skin knitting together without even a scar remaining. It's as though he was never hurt at all. "What the hell is this water?" Kisuke breathes in amazement. He activates appraisal on the spring, and the information reveals its nature, Demon God's elixir, capable of healing any wound or curing any illness as long as one continues drinking it. In simpler terms, an incredibly powerful healing potion. The source appears to be the glowing crystals surrounding the spring, their magic somehow producing this miraculous water. Curiosity drives him to reach out and touch one of the beautiful crystals. Spell tries to stop him, but his fingers make contact before she can intervene. The crystal explodes instantly, shattering into countless glittering fragments that scatter across the ground. Kisuke uses appraisal on the remains and learns that magic crystals of the absolute highest quality, formed through the gradual crystallization of concentrated magic over centuries. But they're extremely fragile in their current unstable state, prone to shattering at the slightest disturbance. Spell explains that higher quality magic crystals become progressively more delicate. Since these formed from her own leaked magic over the centuries, they represent the pinnacle of quality and therefore maximum fragility. She suggests storing the demon god's elixir in his bag instead. It will prove invaluable during his journey. Isuke agrees that having healing water on hand makes perfect sense given the dangers ahead. But another thought occurs to him. What if they could take all the mana crystals here? That would give them an endless supply of demon god's elixir, wouldn't it? Spell laughs at his ambition, calling him quite the greedy one. She warns that he'd be extraordinarily lucky to successfully mine even one crystal out of 1,000 attempts. They're that fragile and difficult to extract, even with high-tier mining skills. Physical mining seems impossible. But Keisuke has a different idea. What if he tries storing them directly with his bag instead of mining them manually? It might just work. Keisuke raises his bag and directs its opening toward the crystalline formations covering the walls. Spell watches with growing curiosity, wondering what he's planning to attempt now. "Just watch," he tells her with quiet confidences. He commands the bag to store every single magic crystal in this chamber. Powerful, absorbing winds erupt from the bag's opening, creating a vortex of dimensional energy. The crystals, those impossibly fragile formations that shatter at the slightest touch, are plucked cleanly from the walls and rocks without breaking. Within seconds, every last crystal vanishes into the bag's dimensional storage, absorbed completely and safely. Spell stares in absolute amazement at what just transpired before her ancient eyes. Kisuke receives the confirmation notifications. Magic crystals stored successfully. Demon God's elixir stored successfully. With that successful demonstration complete, he tests the reverse process, retrieving one of the crystals from storage. It materializes perfectly intact in his palm, and he holds it up for Spell to examine. He's utterly speechless. The limitations of his power seem non-existent. He can literally store anything regardless of fragility or instability. More incredibly, the crystal remains stable even when he touches it directly now. The dimensional storage somehow solved the fragility problem entirely. She finds it almost impossible to believe. This human not only dispelled an absolute barrier that held her for centuries, but also casually stabilized the highest grade magic crystals as though it were the simplest task in the world. "You're really amazing," she says with genuine admiration, but Kisuke shakes his head in correction. "It's actually the bag that's amazing," he insists humbly. The stored Demon God's elixir has been placed in a black container within the bag's dimensional space, making it easily portable. With their preparations complete, they decide to continue moving toward the exit of this hellish prison. However, Spell suddenly picks up something on her magical radar. "What does that mean?" Kisuke asks, alert to potential danger. She explains it's one of her innate skills, magic sense, allowing her to detect the presence of magic and anything imbued with it across considerable distances. Kisuke realizes it's essentially like having a magic radar. He asks for clarification about what things imbued with magic power might include. The answer is broad. Anything from humans to monsters to enchanted items could register on her senses. Isuke's stomach drops at the mention of monsters potentially lurking nearby. But Spell reassures him it's not actually a monster signature she's detecting, but something else entirely. She guides him to the source of the magical reaction, and what they discover is another hero's corpse, this one clutching a cauldron in skeletal hands. Isuke hadn't expected to encounter yet another fallen hero in these depths. Another victim abandoned and discarded here just like him, left to die alone in the darkness of the past. Spell senses magic similar to Kisuke's emanating from the remains, confirming this is indeed the corpse of a hero from a previous summoning. The realization fills Kisuke with sadness. How many heroes has Queen Walujo thrown away like garbage over the years? He asks Spell if she can sense more heroes scattered throughout this dungeon. Her response chills him. There are several more signatures she can detect. "Tell me the locations of all of them," he requests, his voice heavy with determination. Spell guides him to each hero's final resting place one by one, a grim pilgrimage through the dungeon's depths. By the end of their search, Kisuke makes a sobering count. Besides himself and the dagger hero, there were 5 more heroes discarded and left to die in this lowest level alone. Spell adds an even more disturbing detail. There could be many more on the upper floors since they're currently at the bottom of the 7th layer of this dungeon. This level alone contains 250 floors. The sheer number of floors stuns Kisuke into silence. Obviously, none of these newbie heroes summoned without warning, given inadequate weapons, and thrown into this death trap could have possibly survived crossing all those floors alone. But when it comes to his own situation, he might actually make it out. He has his reliable bag, a reliable friend in Spell, and now reliable comrades, referring to the fallen heroes he's absorbed into the bag, whose skills now aid his journey. His inventory of abilities has grown substantially. He acquired the hero's pot with skills like cooking, absolute severance, and heating. Then came the hero's broom, hero's shoes, hero's needle, and lastly the hero's mirror, each with their own unique capabilities. Spell expresses fascination at learning Kisuke can acquire and utilize the abilities of heroes absorbed by the bag. Kisuke makes a solemn vow to himself. He will make good use of every holy weapon he's acquired, and he will escape this place with all of them, ensuring these fallen heroes' powers aren't wasted. Spell wonders aloud why these heroes were discarded when they clearly possessed amazing skills. But Kisuke responds honestly. None of them seem particularly strong at first glance. His bag, the needle, the shoes, these don't appear useful for combat on the surface. But he's certain there could have been better applications for them, because no skill in this world should be inherently useless. Queen Walujo, he concludes bitterly, was a complete fool who judged everyone by appearance alone. The more he thinks about her, the more despicable she becomes. Just then, Spell's senses pick up another magical signature. A monster is approaching their position. Kisuke tenses immediately while Spell assures him there's no cause for alarm. The creature hasn't noticed them yet, and its power level doesn't seem particularly threatening. Kisuke marvels at how much information she can extract from such a distant reading. "What should we do?" he asks, deferring to her experience. Spell suggests she could simply rush forward and slay the monster in an instant. The confident declaration sounds incredibly cool and reliable coming from her, but the suggestion triggers a realization in Kisuke. He needs to fight as well. Eventually, he'll have to face combat in this world on his own, which means gaining as much combat experience as possible right now is crucial. As they walk toward the monster's location, Kisuke's nervousness grows with each step. Spell notices and tells him he doesn't need to force himself. He can leave it to her as his tamed beast, but Kisuke insists he's fine. Her expression grows serious as she lectures him not to feel shame about fear, and if he truly doesn't want to fight, he should be honest about it. Kisuke realizes she can read his emotions clearly, despite his attempts to hide them. But even though fear grips his heart, he wants to fight here and now. He needs to get accustomed to combat to prepare for whatever dangers await them in the future. Besides, with Spell watching over him, nothing could possibly go wrong. Hearing his honest reasoning and trust in her makes something soften in Spell's expression. Kisuke decides that jumping straight into close combat would be terrifying, so he should try a skill that works from a distance first. He brings out the hero's pot, which possesses a ranged skill called Absolute Severance. For this fight, he'll borrow the pot hero's abilities. He mentally prepares himself to utilize the fallen hero's skills. Spell informs him as a helpful reminder. Unlike unique skills, derived skills obtained from absorbed holy weapons can be activated anytime, even without physically holding the weapons. He's impressed by her extensive knowledge and feels genuinely grateful to have her guidance. He checks the Absolute Severance skill description. According to the information, he can cut anything within his line of sight. His plan forms launch a ranged attack from this safe distance, hit the monster through the intervening rocks, and damage it before any close encounter becomes necessary. He activates Absolute Severance and unleashes the skill. Overpowered cutting winds explode from his position, literally slicing clean through everything in sight like a hot knife through butter, the destructive force extending for hundreds of meters in a perfectly straight line. The monster he intended to fight is caught in the attack's path and completely bisected. Only a pool of blood remains behind, along with the level of notification appearing in his vision. Isekai'd stands frozen, shocked that everything in the attack's path was shredded to absolute nothing. Bell comments that he may have overdone it slightly. Kisuke stammers that he didn't mean for the destruction to be this extreme. When he approaches to examine what's left of the monster, literally nothing remains except spreading crimson. This skill went way beyond simply overpowered. It's devastatingly destructive. He couldn't even see the enemy properly before the fight ended. There's no way he can casually use this skill in the future without careful consideration. It could prove dangerous even to himself or allies. This trial run must be classified as a failure in terms of controlled combat experience. He makes a mental note to collect future monster corpses as neatly as possible to preserve their value. Spell asks why that matters. He explains simply, when they return to the surface, he can sell monster corpses for money. It must work like in those fantasy novels he's read, where adventurers trade in monster materials for currency. Bell recalls that humans did indeed buy and sell monster corpses for various purposes back when she was free, so his assumption is correct. Right then, her senses pick up another magical signature. Another monster, approaching from a different direction. She asks Kisuke if he wants to fight this one himself. He nods affirmatively. He does want to get accustomed to using his powers properly. First, he decides to approach the creature slowly and confirm what it looks like before engaging. Once he gets close enough, he switches tactics and brings out the hero's mirror this time, planning to use its skills, mirror sight, reflection, and illusion. Spell asks if he can really utilize multiple holy weapons like this. Kisuke mentions that heroes are supposedly restricted to equipping only their own holy weapon, but right now he can use multiple weapons, probably because he stored them in the bag. Spell theorizes it might also be possible because he stored the holy weapons together with their hero's remains, creating some kind of resonance. He agrees that could be the case, but regardless of the mechanics, they need to focus on the enemy ahead. He activates mirror sight, which sends a twin mirror identical to the one in his, and floating forward through the air until it positions itself directly above the monster. Through this conjured mirror, he gains a perfect aerial view of the creature below, a massive lizard lounging ahead without any awareness of being observed. Spell identifies it as a black flame lizard, a giant fire-breathing reptile known for its aggression. Kisuke thanks her for the information. It's genuinely helpful since appraisal will eventually have its limitations in providing tactical advice. Spell practically glows with happiness at his praise, her tail wagging cutely in response to the compliment. She asks how he plans to fight this time. He replies that since using Absolute Severance proved far too dangerous and destructive, he'd like to test a different holy weapon. He retrieves the hero's needle, which comes with skills like Sewing Supreme and Anesthetic Needles. He activates the Anesthetic Needle skill, ranked SSS, supposedly capable of putting anyone pierced by it into deep slumber. Spell notes it's a powerful ability, but doesn't he need to get dangerously close to the target? Kisuke smirks. That's fine, he'll just throw the needle through the mirror portal. He releases the needle, and it passes seamlessly through the mirror on his end, emerging from the aerial mirror positioned above the monster. Spell watches in amazement as the skill demonstrates perfect spatial coordination. Kisuke feels awesome wielding such a versatile ability. The black flame lizard receives the needle strike from above, the projectile piercing its scales cleanly. Immediately, the massive creature collapses, falling into what appears to be deep slumber, except it doesn't rise again. Kisuke initially assumes the monster is simply sleeping soundly, but when he retrieves the dagger and cautiously approaches to confirm, getting close enough to examine the creature from just a meter away, he realizes with dawning horror that the black flame lizard is actually dead, not sleeping. Kisuke never expected the sleep effect of the needle to literally put targets to sleep forever permanent death. Spell tells him bluntly it's his own fault for not checking the level of his holy weapon beforehand. Kisuke admits he didn't think to check earlier. Now that he examines the hero's bag's level, it displays as 124. It's a massive jump from the last time he checked at level 103. Spell explains the fundamental mechanics. The maximum effect of any skill depends on the user's level, which means the power behind all his skills has increased dramatically. If he were to use any skill at full power now, even a harmless sleeping effect could transform into an instant death effect. Kisuke wonders when exactly he leveled up so much. Spell theorizes it probably happened when he stored the heroes and their holy weapons in the bag. She proposes an interesting theory. Maybe the levels of all stored holy weapons are being added to the bag's base level, which would explain the exponential growth. 7 holy weapons total means his leveling speed has increased to 7 times the normal rate. In other words, he's literally an overpowered protagonist who will become stronger 7 times faster than his already ridiculous growth rate. It's extraordinary, and Spell admits she's never heard of such a phenomenon occurring in all of history. An idea strikes Kisuke. What if he keeps wearing the hero's shoes constantly? Won't that also keep generating experience points? Those shoes let him walk without ever getting tired and even enable him to walk on air. Spell compliments how good they look on him, then suggests that since he managed to take down the monster cleanly anyway, he should practice dissecting it with the hero's dagger. He approaches the lizard's corpse to attempt the task, but Spell immediately alerts him to multiple magical signatures appearing in the nearby area. Lots of monsters this time, and they're closing in fast. Kisuke feels grateful she can sense creatures from such distances. If he were alone and had started dissecting the corpse, he would have been surrounded and devoured before even noticing the danger. He decides to abandon the lizard for now and suggests they retreat quickly. But Spell delivers bad news. It's already too late. They're completely surrounded. She sounds ashamed that these weaklings managed to get so close without her noticing earlier. Her pride is wounded, and she wants to scatter them immediately herself, but Kisuke stops her, pointing out that if she fights here, things could get chaotic. She'd be busy with monsters while he'd be left defenseless and vulnerable. They need to hide somewhere safe. When his eyes land on his bag, an idea forms. What if he tries entering the bag himself? To his amazement, the bag really does teleport him into a safe dimensional space within its storage. Once they're both inside the bag's pocket dimension, the bag itself vanishes from the physical world, leaving no trace behind for the monsters to find. Isekai'd feels himself falling deeper and deeper into the bag's dimensional space. Spell tumbling alongside him through the void. They land together on a smooth, solid surface that materializes beneath them. This is Kisukei's first glimpse of the interior world contained within his bag. After successfully escaping to this pocket dimension, he learns the space is called Garden, though it's an ironic name for what appears to be an endless white void stretching in every direction as far as the eye can see. It takes several moments of studying the information before he finally grasps the mechanics. The Hero Bag's Garden skill creates a personal dimension where only the user and those granted permission can enter. Spell remarks with obvious envy that it's an absolutely broken cheat skill, essentially carrying a portable safe zone wherever he goes. Kisuke asks what exactly constitutes a safe zone. Spell explains the concept. It's a protected area where monsters fundamentally cannot enter, no matter how powerful. Now that he considers it properly, the implications are staggering. He'll be able to escape to complete safety regardless of where danger finds him in this world. Spell grows visibly frustrated, rolling around on the white ground while lamenting that if only she'd possessed such an ability 1,000 years ago, that hero with barrier magic would never have succeeded in sealing her away. Kisuke can see the centuries of hardship reflected in her expression. She must have endured truly terrible isolation. Regardless, they've successfully hidden from the monster pack, so now seems like an appropriate time to regroup. Then a thought strikes Kisuke. Perhaps he could continue dissecting that black flame lizard from earlier? The bag's voice confirms that any stored items can be freely accessed and utilized within this space. He simply needs to visualize what he wants. The lizard corpse materializes instantly right before his eyes, as though summoned from thin air. The convenience is remarkable. Kisuke decides to test the system further by summoning the hero's pod as well to see if it works the same way. Next, he retrieves the dagger from storage. According to the weapon's skill description, it possesses an ability specifically for dissecting monsters, one that can transform a creature's corpse into perfectly intact, organized materials. Moving with extreme caution, Kisuke very slowly brings the dagger's edge into contact with the lizard's scaled hide. The instant blade touches flesh, smoke erupts from the point of contact. In a flash of light, the entire monster's body separates into component parts with surgical precision, as though he'd simply disassembled a complex Lego construction piece by piece. The dagger's skill made the whole process effortless. Spell examines the results and confirms that none of the separated parts show any traces of contamination from the anesthetic needle either. Everything is perfectly preserved. Kisuke remarks that having skills make tasks conveniently easy, which seems natural, but Spell corrects his assumption. Normally, dissecting a monster properly takes tremendous time and effort, requiring expertise and precision. Even this dissection skill qualifies as an absolute cheat ability, saving them countless hours of grueling work. Isuke offers sincere thanks to the fallen dagger hero for all the assistance his weapon provides. Spell finds it peculiar that he shows such respect to the deceased, and Keisuke recalls his sister used to call him strange for similar behavior. Now he turns his attention to the neatly separated black flame lizard parts scattered before him, wondering if they can be stored in the bag like any other items. He simply visualizes the action as usual, and every dissected component vanishes into storage. A detailed inventory list even appears, cataloging each piece individually. Or, Spell points out that he left some meat behind on the ground. He explains that was intentional. He's thinking about trying to cook it using the hero's pot's abilities, Asters, but the idea of consuming monster flesh clearly doesn't appeal to Spell in the slightest. As a divine beast herself, she insists that monsters simply don't taste good. It's a fundamental truth. Her expression radiates pure disgust at the very concept of eating monster meat. But Keisuke's curiosity refuses to be suppressed. Monster meat represents a genuine fantasy element that didn't exist in his world, and he desperately wants to experience it. In the end, his adventurous spirit wins out, and he decides to cook the monster meat regardless of her warnings. Spell tells him to do whatever pleases him while she occupies herself with the sweet buns, clearly wanting no part in this experiment. Isekai'd brings out the hero's pot and prepares to activate the cooking supreme skill, supposedly capable of creating any dish as long as the proper ingredients are available. He decides to supplement the monster meat with additional ingredients from the bag's retrieval system. Various spices, sauces, and even paper plates materialize at his command. The actual cooking process takes barely 1 minute from start to finish. Now comes the moment of truth time to taste actual monster meat for the first time. He takes the first tentative bite, bracing for the worst. Instead, he's completely overwhelmed by the wholesome, incredibly delicious flavor that explodes across his palate. The taste is so delightful he could wax poetic about it for paragraphs. Savory, rich, perfectly seasoned beyond anything he expected. Spell watches him with growing bewilderment, clearly thinking he's become even stranger than her initial assessment. Isekai'd takes another enthusiastic bite and urges Spell to try some as well, assuring her it's genuinely tasty. She thinks he's lying through his teeth and declares she won't be deceived that easily. But he guarantees, with complete sincerity, that he's telling the truth. Spell remains adamant there's absolutely no way monster meat could taste good. It's impossible. Keisuke realizes he can't force someone to eat food they dislike on principle. However, since his budget doesn't allow unlimited supplies from his world, he needs to transition toward locally available food sources anyway. Maybe if the presentation looks more appetizing, she'll reconsider. Spell's guard immediately goes up, sensing he's plotting something. Keisuke summons vegetables through the retrieval system and adds them to the pot alongside the meat, cooking everything together into a unified dish. The finished product releases an absolutely exquisite aroma that fills the garden space. Spell does her absolute best to resist, reminding herself that she's Superbia, the demon lord of arrogance, who would never stoop so low as to consume monster flesh. But the intoxicating smell eventually proves too powerful for even her legendary pride to withstand. She leans forward and takes a single bite, then immediately howls so loudly the sound echoes through the dimensional space, because holy hell, this is incredibly delicious. Isuke grins with satisfaction, glad she likes it. Spell asks what kind of dish this is, completely stunned that monster meat could taste this phenomenal. He proudly introduces the meal as curry rice, a staple from his world. Belle absolutely loves it, praising every aspect from the complex aroma to the unique flavor profile she's never experienced in her long existence. It's truly worthy of being called a masterpiece of culinary achievement. Keisuke is pleased she enjoys it, and the very next moment she requests seconds. He teases her about abandoning her stance against eating monster meat. She immediately takes back her previous words and simply wants to keep eating more and more of his cooking. Isuke thinks how nice it is to enjoy a delicious meal in the safety of his protected zone. Then Spell asks for more curry. He firmly tells her no, she's already eaten plenty. She's consumed 2 entire pots full of curry rice already. At this rate, this won't save any money either. But she begs him to allow just a bit more, reminding him she endured centuries without any food or drink before meeting him. When she frames it like that, how can he possibly refuse? He relents and cooks 1 more pot of curry, but establishes this will absolutely be the last one. She devours it while praising the food from his world enthusiastically. It's genuinely amazing how she can feel power literally surging through her body with each bite. Compared to this, the food of this world tastes like garbage. Keisuke suspects she's experiencing enhanced flavor due to the prolonged starvation, but he wonders if it's safe for her to venture outside now. She suggests he use the mirror to check the current situation. That sounds like a practical idea. He activates mirror sight immediately, sending 1 mirror outside the bag's dimension to observe what's happening in the cave. The view reveals many monsters still prowling around their previous location. A pack of wolves that hunt cooperatively, chasing prey relentlessly until exhaustion claims their victims. Keisuke wonders if they'll eventually leave if he simply waits here long enough, but Spell doesn't think so. Once those wolves pick up their scent trail, they'll pursue them forever with their incredibly powerful sense of smell. But he doesn't need to worry, because he has her, the Demon Lord Superbia, at his side now. Excitement and relief flood through Keisuke as he remembers Spell possesses overwhelming strength. She also mentions wanting to exercise a bit after remaining idle for so many years. She tells him to simply watch from the safety of the garden while she handles this. Just to be safe, he asks her to be careful out there, though honestly he's not worried at all. Spell leaps out of the bag, her form emerging into the physical cave, materializing outside in her massive, gigantic divine beast form. Her aura as the Demon Lord radiates outward, filling the entire chamber with oppressive power. But then confusion crosses her features as she notices the wolves in the cave look strangely small to her perception. What the heck is happening? Meanwhile, Keisuke watches in amazement through the mirror. From his perspective, she's overpowering the wolves with ridiculous ease. Her enormous size is incredibly reassuring. If he compares her to the black rocks nearby, which stand roughly his height, Spell Tower is at least 15 meters taller than a human. He assumes this must be some special ability exclusive to demon lords, but Spell herself is genuinely troubled, uncertain what happened to her body. Rather than show weakness in front of Keisuke, she acts tough and stomps around, crushing some wolves and scaring the rest away. Keisuke compares the sight to an elephant casually crushing ants, leaving all the small wolves paralyzed with terror before they scatter in panicked retreat. Once the area clears and safety is confirmed, Keisuke exits the bag using the same method he entered. Once outside in the cave again, he quickly rushes toward Spell to enthusiastically praise her for scaring off those wolves so effortlessly. She looks at him with nervous uncertainty while he continues, complementing her overwhelming and intimidating aura. From up close, she appears even more massive and imposing than through the mirror. But when she asks what's going on, Keisuke is left puzzled about what she's referring to. She clarifies she's talking about her enormous body. This is the first time she's ever been in such a state with this gigantic size. Keisuke is shocked to hear that admission, having honestly assumed this was her combat transformation or something similar. She denies possessing any ability to grow this enormous in the first place, which raises the critical question, what's happening to her? He tries brainstorming possible causes. Could it be some kind of abnormal status effect? In which case, appraisal might reveal the answer. He focuses the skill on her, and initially it displays normal information about Divine Beast Fenrir, the Demon Lord of Arrogance. Then she urges him to look more carefully. He should be able to see additional details. He concentrates harder on the appraisal function and notices she's currently affected. A theory forms, and she asks Keisuke if it could be caused by the dish they ate. She requests he praise the curry itself. Keisuke discovers that dishes created by the hero's pot possess buff effects, which amazes him even further, a stark reminder that he really is in another world now. Spell marvels at the effects, as expected of the hero's pot's abilities. She's never heard of something this powerful, granting multiple enhancement effects simultaneously. Moreover, she theorizes that his use of multiple hero weapons during cooking must have amplified the overall effects exponentially. This brings them to a mutual conclusion. They absolutely cannot casually serve that food to random people, or it could cause a massive commotion. However, the fact that only Keisuke can create it provides some relief, which leaves them with only one pressing issue. What should Spell do with all this excessive magic power flooding through her body? Right then, she loses control as magic begins overflowing uncontrollably, her body starting to glow with dangerous intensity. Keisuke asks with alarm what's happening to her. She warns him her magic power is about to rampage, an outburst is imminent. Keisuke's worry spikes, but she immediately commands him to get inside the bag right now. He's not safe here in the open. Keisuke heeds her urgent call and dives back into the bag's dimensional safety. Once inside, he immediately uses the mirror to observe what's happening outside. Spell's entire body radiates with overflowing magic power, energy crackling around her massive form. The sheer quantity of raw magical energy is enough to make the entire dungeon floor tremble violently. She feels like she's about to vomit all the excessive power outward. Since keeping her head lowered could prove catastrophically dangerous, she somehow forces herself to raise her head straight upward, directing all the rampaging magic power at the dungeon's ceiling high above. The magic outburst obliterates the entire section of ceiling it touches, carving a massive, gaping hole straight through multiple floors above. Even Keisuke feels some of the pressure reverberating through the mirror-site connection. The dungeon structure around that hole is blown away without exception, debris cascading down. Once she finishes releasing all the excessive magic power from her system, water begins pouring down from the upper floors through the newly created opening. Ensuring his own safety first, Keisuke emerges from the bag and rushes to check on Spell's condition. Is she okay? The worry drives him forward, only to discover she's actually feeling incredibly healthy, as though she's never experienced such relief and vitality in her entire existence. He tells her she did excellent work handling that crisis. She admits she didn't expect the magic power accumulation to be that excessively strong. Although it was worth the experience since the food tasted so good, Keisuke warns they should exercise more caution about portion sizes next time. She wholeheartedly agrees, though she never imagined they'd end up literally blowing away the dungeon ceiling like that. creating their own exit in such a dramatic fashion. Natural light streams down from the upper floor, filtering through the destruction. But Spell knows how abnormal this is. Dungeon structures are specifically designed to resist destruction even from Demon Lord level power, and yet they just carved through it effortlessly simply because Spell consumed too much of Kisuke's cooking, creating an unprecedented fusion of hero and Demon Lord power working in tandem. Kisuke doubts it's entirely his fault, but, well, what's done is done. No point dwelling on it now. On the positive side, they can use this hole in the ceiling as a convenient shortcut to exit the dungeon much faster than climbing normally. With the help of the hero's boots, Kisuke begins walking on air, ascending toward the opening. Once he gets close enough to the dungeon breach they inadvertently created, Isekai'd gains his first view of the floor above this lowest level. What greets his eyes is a world dominated by volcanic activity and molten rock. Just one floor up represents a dramatic shift in the entire environment compared to the limestone caves below. Continuing upward through the hole extending to the floor above that as well, he keeps ascending steadily, crossing through wildly different climate zones, including fierce snowstorms and blizzards. These teeming with aggressive aquatic monsters. High, dense forests populated entirely by wild dungeon mushrooms of enormous size. Rocky cliff areas with treacherous terrain everywhere he looks. The higher he climbs through the floors, the narrower the hole becomes due to the angle of Spell's blast. Soon enough, they reach a lair cloaked in pitch-black darkness. The complete absence of light strikes them as particularly strange compared to previous floors. Spell confirms this is indeed a proper floor, just shrouded in darkness. But after walking only a short distance into the gloom, Spell suddenly goes on high alert when she senses something dangerous lurking behind them.